Saxon Algebra 1. Welcome to the midwinter, the winter midterm review. I call it the winter midterm because we're taking a midterm on the lessons we covered during the winter. I'm going to give you lesson numbers and then I'm going to give you a description of what we covered in those lessons. The most important thing is that I will give you formulas and different things like that that you might need to remember in order to do those problems successfully. So this will give you something to work on your memorizing from. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work backwards from the most recent lesson we covered, and I'm going to list out, let's see, I think it's probably 13, 14 different lessons. I will be building the test from 10 of those lessons, okay? So 10 problems on the test, but I'm giving you more than 10 different subjects to study. I'm also starting at the most recent, and I'm working backwards. Because all of our lessons build on one another, I don't worry about going back and choosing, the lesson that was covered the first week of January, because probably we used that lesson as a baby step towards something else. So that's why I just do the most recent lessons. This topic was difference of two squares. What we learned in this one is that if you do some algebra on this, where you have square equals square, you'll get that one side equals plus or minus of the other side, okay? We use difference of two squares to resolve this, but if you just focus on this pattern, you'll be fine. 95. Lesson 95 was graphs. Make sure you're copying this down exactly as I do it. And these will be fabulous study notes. We're going to review the material, and then I have a couple other topics that I want to cover for you. Graphs of nonlinear functions. These were all the drawings that we did that day, remember? What I want you to remember about them is the general shape of each of the different functions, what makes it unique, and then I want you to remember the simple form of each equation, and I will give those to you with the shapes. All right, so we know that here's the x squared function. We call that the quadratic function. That makes the shape we call the parabola. Another function is the x cubed function, and that goes more like that, right? It goes swoopy. If we look at the square root function, that looks kind of like that. And then the last one is the absolute value function, and that one makes a very distinct V shape. All right, make sure you know which equation goes with which picture. Lesson 94. That was the first of what I call our dirt problems. John calls our uniform motion. Remember, I want you to not be scared of this name. What it means is that you're moving at a constant speed all the way through the trip. That's not how human beings take trips, right? We speed up, we slow down, we stop for ice cream. We do not maintain uniform motion, but for these types of problems, we're pretending that we do. The Lesson 94 was the second one we learned, and that's based on the story of the Titanic, remember? Where we have either a ship bumping into an iceberg, or we have Jack sinking to the bottom of the ocean and Rose going on to New York. Or another way we can look at this is Rose traveled part of the way by ship, and then she switched to a different ship and took the second ship the rest of the way to her new home in New York. All of these we call the total, K, and then we call the distances D1 and D2. Make sure you're copying all of this picture. I know you have it in your other notes, but copy it again. And what we can say for this one is that distance 1 plus distance 2 equals k, right? Because k is the total trip. And then we can switch this into a base equation by saying r1t1 plus r2t2, which I never get tired of saying that. This is what we would then use for our base equation. Because rate times time equals distance. Remember that we can change these 1s and 2s into letters that match the story better, but for purposes of just explaining it in general, I just use the 1s and 2s. 93. 93 are those lovely fractions with the expressions in each one that we factor. We call this products and divisors of rational expressions. And these are where you factor each numerator or denominator, and then you have a canceling party, right? And it all happily fades away. 92 is the other uniform motion style problem. I'm just blasting through these, aren't I? This one is not the Titanic. This is Lord of the Rings. And remember, that is where either Frodo and Sam are both going to Mordor, or it could be they go to the mountain and then they turn around and come back. Those are two classic versions of this type of problem, D1 and D2. And in these, we notice that the two trips are the same. So D1 equals D2. And then when we play that out with rates and times, it becomes R1T1 equals R2T2. That's our base equation. Okay? With both of these, I just want to remind you that if the problem asks you how far, then that tells you that you want to find the distance. Okay, so sometimes at the end of the problem, when you've solved for the rates and the times, you need to answer the question of how far, and in doing that, you take one of the rates and one of the times that go together, right? And then multiply them out. They should be the same in this one. So John sometimes asks how far, and that's a nifty little trick. All right, next, let's see, I'll put my headings back up so you won't get confused. Let's see, we're to lesson 91. That is about graphing inequalities. Remember that when the domain equals the integers, we make dots, right, wherever we think they're appropriate. And it's either included or not included, right? Greater than. We have to be careful. For example, remembering the difference between these two. You either include the number that is given or you don't, right? But it's just dots. It's a little more subtle when the domain is the reals. That is where we draw arrows, right? Something like that. In these, if it's greater than or less than, then we have the open circle, right? Like this. But if we're including an equal sign, and so that means we want to include the exact number in our solution, I call that a dot. We could call this a closed dot. And you need to color it in. I like to kind of shade it like that, but you can do it however you want. But this shows that the exact number is included. The open circle shows, no, it's not. Okay, that's 91. Lesson 90. Hi, Grace. She was just begging off my daughters who had a little midnight snack. They cooked up some ramen. The whole house smells spicy and delicious. And Gracie has been drooling like a mad woman in the kitchen where they were eating. And they just went back upstairs, so she has given up and come in to hear the math review. So she's pumped to be here. Lesson 90. Two statements of equality. Those are the word problems. That aren't necessarily coin problems or coin-ish problems, but they are systems of equations. So we write two different equations. Remember to be very careful about balancing statements, right? Where we write the inequality first and then we fix it. Ugh, those are the tricky business here. Always write an inequality first. Do not try and do it in your head, please. I mean, unless you're really comfortable and you've been doing it for a while. But if you're struggling with these problems at all, it's probably these balancing statements, and if you'll write the inequality first, it will solve your problems. Oh, look what I did. I'm going the wrong way. This is 89. This is value statement systems. I'm just going to call it value statements. Oh my gosh, spell it wrong 100 different ways. These are the coin-ish problems where you have a quantity and a value statement. Those usually go pretty straightforward. 88 is solving quadratic equations. No formulas to that. 87. Test for functions. Okay, there's another lesson that also has a test for functions in it. So I'm not going to say anything more about this yet. Let me get down to, it's 84. Okay, so this is 87. 86, I'm going to talk more about this in just a second. 86 is dividing polynomials. That's just a little polynomials. That's just a little island unto itself. There's nothing else like that. Now I'll come to 84, which is also test for functions. In this lesson, we talked about the circle diagrams, right? They always, this is weird. This is really weird, but they remind me of lungs because there's the two thing and then they connect, right? I call those circle diagrams. That's one way you can test for functions. Another way we learned is by ordered pairs. And that's where you get a long list of like 4, 3, 5, 2, 6, 0, or whatever, right? Blah, blah, blah. And you look to see if there's any matching X's. And then if you find matching X's, then you have to make sure the Y's are good too. So this was the first way we learned to test for functions, was by looking at the circle diagrams. The second way we learned to test was by ordered pairs. And then the third way we learned to test is up here, was by the vertical line test. And that is where you have a graph of the function and you look and see, if I draw vertical lines, am I going to hit the line more than once? If you hit it more than once, then there's trouble with any vertical line, right? So there's 3 different tests for functions that we learned spread out across 2 different lessons. 84. Wait. This was a 2-parter. This, we also learned about multiplying radicals. And if I can teach you anything about multiplying radicals, is remember, we multiply wolf to wolf, Those are the outside numbers. And pig to pig. The little pigs are safe inside the house. The wolves are outside huffing and puffing. We multiply wolf to wolf and we multiply pig to pig. That's the way we do it. And then remember also when you're multiplying radicals, the other reminder is whenever possible to simplify, right? Make your little prime factor tree and look for pairs of pigs. 2 pigs in the house equals 1 pig out of the house, right? So multiply when you can. All right, we're almost done. Oh no, that's the end. 84 is the last lesson. How many did I give you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, I will choose 10 of those 13 and the problems will be on the test. All right, I will have them in the same order from most recent to least recent for whatever it's worth. I will also put the lesson number that the problem comes from on the test. Just like in your homework, you know how there's a little number in parentheses and that tells you what lesson it came from? I will put that on the test as well. It might jog your memory. It might just be a fussy little detail. Up to you. Okay, study plan. That's our next topic to study. Now, this might be obvious, but let me remind you. Whenever you're preparing for a test, you need to study, prepare, by doing whatever it is that you're going to be doing on the test. So if you're doing true or false questions on a test, then you need to practice true or false questions. If you're writing essays for a test, then you need to practice writing essays. If you're taking a math test and there are going to be problems on the test, then you need to actually do the problems. I have had students who have told me that their method of studying was to flip through the textbook and just look at the different lessons and go, oh yeah, I know how to do that. Oh yeah, that one's easy. Oh yeah, I know how to do that. I'm like, that's lovely, but that doesn't prepare you adequately for a test. You have to actually do problems. So here's what I want you to do. Work problems, work actual problems. The first thing I want you to do is work all example problems for the 13 lessons on the list. Okay, that is the first thing I want you to do is go through and do all of those problems. If you can do all of the example problems for all 13 lessons, you're probably in great shape. If you are still, if you work through these, okay, let me say this. The reason I want you to do the example problems is because right in front of you, you will have the most detailed answer available to you. So I want you to do the example problem so that if you go wrong, you can look back at it and go, okay, tell me, John, what I do wrong. There are also the problems that I worked in the videos, so they should be familiar to you. That can work against you, but I think it's useful to be reminded. If you are still confused at this, if you still feel like you need a little more practice, work the practice problems, right? The A-B type problems at the front of each one. So work the practice problems if you want more. That's my advice to you. Okay? Obviously, any problems are going to be good, but if you go to the practice in each lesson and work those, it just is a very neat, efficient way to find some more problems. If you're still confused, call, and by call I mean message me. You can call me if you want, but most students are not going to call me. If you are at all confused, if you've got a single problem that's messing you up, if there's a topic that you just can't get straight, please, I would love to help you. You would make my day if you just reached out to me and said, help me with these. And the last tip I'll give you about studying is you don't need to do a ton of studying, but remember that the test is going to be on Wednesday. So you're going to take it between noon on Wednesday and noon on Thursday probably. I want you to study within 24 hours of when you start taking the test. Okay? Studying is great at any time, but it's nice to do it within a few hours of when you're going to be actually taking the test. Remember that I will be dropping off the test between 12 and 1 on Wednesday. That's this Wednesday, which is the 30th. And then I'll be picking up between 2 and 3 on Thursday. So you have all that time in there to take the test as your brain sees fit. If you need more time, please message me and tell me before I get to your house so that I won't show up at your house when you're not done yet. But I'll use the same method as I have since COVID, right? I'll drop it off on your porch and come pick it up later. I'm fully vaccinated. If you're fully vaccinated and you want to say hi to me, hey, come say hi to me. I would love it. Honestly, at this point, you don't have to be fully vaccinated to say hi to me. That sounds weird. But yeah, if I'm out on your porch and you see me, feel free to come out and holler at me. The last thing I want to talk about is test anxiety. Everybody gets a little test anxiety. It's normal. It's good to be, the anxiety just brings our attention up a little bit, brings our energy levels up a little bit, but too much of a good thing can be a problem, right? And some people really struggle with feeling anxious before their test. Too anxious enough that it detracts from their work on the test. So what I want you to do is make a plan to deal with it. My favorite, I didn't get test anxiety in high school. I got a little test anxiety. I noticed it bump up when I was in college. The work was a lot harder and I cared a lot more about doing well. And what I found was that I would be in my dorm room, I would be really stressed out. I would pack up my stuff in my backpack and I would start hiking to my class. I went to a big university. I went to Michigan State University, and by big, I mean it's a lot of acreage, like it's spread out. It's a beautiful campus. If you ever get a chance to go there, do. It's beautiful. It's like a big park. But usually I had to walk at least 10 minutes to get to where my classes were, or to where the tests were. There was a couple classes I had later on where I would have like a half hour of trucking to get there. And what I realized is that that was a wonderful way to calm down. So that's my number one way to deal with test anxiety, is go outside and walk before you take the test. Obviously, you're taking the test at home, so you don't have to walk, but you know what I'm saying? It's a great way to just kind of burn off that extra energy, clear your mind, center yourself, and then come in, relax, and take the test. All right. If there's anything else you have questions about, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I wish you the best of luck. Thanks, bye.